right? The exponential distribution is one where the level of the quantity increases proportional, the quantity's increase is proportional to its level. And I think that we are involved in an exponential distribution for getting people to collect signatures. I think what's going on is that if we had 10 million signatures, there'd be a lot more enthusiasm for collecting the remaining, 120 million, okay? When you only have, less than 2,000, some people are impressed by that. It's not chicken feed, right? But it's closer to zero than it is to 130 million, that's for sure, right? So most people are still not at all persuaded that it's easy to collect signatures. Most people think they think it's going to be very hard. That's the mindset. That's what we're trying to change. So until you have, the more signatures you have, the more persuasive you are in saying it's actually easy to collect signatures. And important to collect signatures. Why don't you join in the effort? So we're at the exponential curve that goes like this, right? We're all the way on this side, where the number of signatures is very low, and hence the rate of increase of signatures and people collecting is very small. Right. We have a few individuals, basically, and one or two, you're a new individual, right? And every once in a while, maybe we get another individual. But I think what the future is that as that number grows, and it keeps growing, because Abraham and I have been doing it every weekend, right? As that number grows, we're going to get a few more individuals and a few more, and then eventually we're going to get to the part of the curve where, the increase is substantially greater, until it levels off because you end up getting all the signatures you're ever going to get, right? So, we're trying to persuade people to dip their toe in the water. So, for instance, to someone like you, with your friends, classmates, and whatever, if you're game, you can take a sheet that has this, I believe, in the back. You can tell people you went to this crazy meeting, what this crazy person said, and you can ask people to read it. And if you go online to pdrboston.org, there's a little section there about tips for collecting signatures. You can, some conversational points that you can make, and see how people respond. See if they want to sign it. See if I don't know if you want to sign it or not. So. No one, maybe you didn't ask about it because you didn't notice it, but one of the things that we get questioned about is the paragraph that says laws are only made by local assemblies. Mm-hmm. Did you see that paragraph? Yeah. If you want, you can ask about that. That's one of the main points that we get questioned on.
Oh yeah, actually, somebody in church didn't. A couple of people didn't sign, and there was something.
And on the web, there's a place where in the menu, the sub-menu that addresses that issue. By the way, if you want to take a look. The reason for emphasizing that only local assemblies have lawmaking power is that the contrary principle is that people far away in a central government of some sort should have the power to write laws that you have to obey, and that's a recipe for domination of people by a small, oppressive elite, because it's not hard to influence, a relatively small number of people, in some central government far away. That's what lobbyists have obviously done it already in the current situation. big money controls how the laws are written. But, you know, in the Soviet Union, for example, the Bolsheviks basically took advantage of the fact that people were used to the Tsar being the central authority. You had to obey the Tsar because he was the Tsar. And they substituted the Bolshevik Party for the Tsar.
And the church, too, was also...
And the church, well, they eliminated the church, so...
Well, I mean, they were used to
the
church also telling them the same
thing.
thing.
So, the Bolsheviks were able to be extremely anti-democratic because people were used to the principle that, well, someone's got to be making the laws in the central government, and whoever it is, you have to obey them. The real democracy, in my opinion, the kind that really makes a difference, that matters, is when people who value equality and mutual aid, the only laws that people in that community have to obey are the laws that are made by all of those egalitarian people in the community, at least the ones who care to show up and get involved. And no one can order them what to do. And some people say, well, that's anarchy in the sense of just chaos, right? Every community does something different, blah, blah, blah. But it's not, because the point in the same paragraph is that voluntary federation is the way that you get order on a large scale, even a global scale, you know, for things that people want to coordinate on a global scale, with delegates from local communities going to assemblies of delegates from other local communities. The difference, the key difference, is that at these assemblies of delegates, their role is to craft proposals for the assemblies from which, you know, their delegate members come. And their proposals are implemented only if and when the sufficient number of local assemblies agree with implementing it. And otherwise, there's typically, I would imagine, negotiations back and forth to modify and amend proposals until there are a sufficient number of local communities that agree to implement it. That's real democracy. That's how people make agreements, mutual agreements, to do this or that. Now, there was a woman Saturday at the Stop and Shop in Jamaica Plain who wouldn't sign because she said, you know, but that means that the people in Brookline could decide to drive on the left and the people in Boston to drive on the right. And I said, you know, if you think that ordinary people are so idiotic to do something like that, then your attitude towards ordinary people is so negative that of course, you know, you're going to prefer having some dictator in Washington tell people what side of the street they have to drive on and everything else for that matter.
Right.
The view of people that this egalitarianism is based on is that the majority of people are reasonable.
Well, what about somebody at my church who didn't want to sign it said, well, like, you know, she says, she was saying that, you know, federal government is kind of important. You know, not having a centralized power means states, red states, you know, with their attitudes,
okay,
maybe could say, well, we don't want illegal immigrants. We don't want, you know, people coming across the border, or we don't want, you know, gay people, or, you know, we don't want in our state. So and all the people there might go, yeah, good idea.
So let's address that, okay? If the principle of egalitarianism is that egalitarians should shape society by egalitarian values. And corollary of that is that egalitarians have... Hi, Rita.
Hi, just checking, was it too long?
Well, you missed the talk. We're now just having the discussion, but you're welcome to join.
No, I just came from a meeting. I just wanted to know
Sylvia unlocked it, yeah, around 6:30, Sylvia came and unlocked it.
Okay.
Thank you for your help,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, actually now, but thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, thanks for coming.
Send us whatever you come up with for your class.
Okay.
Yeah, be very interested. Nice to meet you, thanks.
So the principle of egalitarianism is that egalitarians should shape society by their values, and egalitarians should prevent other people from shaping society by the contrary values of inequality and you know, abusing people and so forth. So what does that mean? If a community or a region, even democratically, decides to do something that's very anti-egalitarian, for example, enslave a certain race of people, or base their whole society
don't make it as extreme, make it less extreme.
on child abuse. Well, I'm making it extreme
Oh, okay. All right.
just to make a point, but okay.
Oh.
If they do something which egalitarians consider an attack on anti-egalitarian, then egalitarians are totally within their rights, as we've discussed, what's right and wrong at least, in preventing these people from doing these bad things by whatever means necessary. They can use voluntary federation to create a militia, an army if necessary, or whatever, right? To go to that community and say, no, you can't enslave these people.
If you had to do things like that, would it be easier to do it if you had a central government?
Well, that's the thing. They're saying that we need a central federal government to do something is very different than saying that we need an organized, effective effort to do that thing. Very different, very, very different things. One, the source of power and is coming from the people who are implementing that effort, and the other, the source of power is coming from dictates from above. So, you know, if you submit to the idea that you need a federal government to do this, well, you know, the next day they're done doing that. Now they're going to do this, and then they're going to do that and do that.
But
you know,
just for utilitarian kind of purposes, like it's just that if you needed a force to go in and take care of a problem like that, you know, if you're spread out around the country, how do you organize
but you see,
militias to go in?
But the Spanish Revolution, which was essentially an egalitarian revolution, had to fight Franco, the fascists. And they did. And they did it with militias organized on this principle.
Well, the American Revolution too. I guess,
Yeah. In other words, it's not, the issue isn't whether people should unite on a large scale. And the issue isn't even whether they should have a disciplined militia. Okay. All of that is doable with voluntary federation. The issue is the principle that you have to obey someone because they're the higher authority, whether you agree with what they're doing and the purposes and their goals behind it or not. That's the authoritarian principle. That's the principle of central government. The central government must be obeyed no matter what.
Yeah, right.
We're saying no.
And there's another aspect to this question. It's not the government, the federal government, that comes in and changes things, and then things are, you know, better. People change them. The civil rights movement was people changing things, and government then reacting and acting like it was their idea, and that they're the wellspring of this goodwill and order. You know, so that's one thing, and that leads into the next point, which is if your conception of the majority of Americans, the South, whatever portion of America you have this idea about it. If your idea of it is that they're all racist, you know, then egalitarianism might not be for you. It might not be something that makes sense for you to endorse, because it's, in practice it would be a few egalitarians over here and the rest are all a bunch of racists and homophobes. But fortunately that's a false conception of America and of the South, especially.
We're all mixed up.
Yeah, it's people, and that's the number one propaganda, is that everyone is selfish and greedy economically and otherwise, or they're racist and homophobic to boot. You know, and they do that to discredit.
These days is to divide us, constantly divide us.
Yeah. Otherwise, they
can
have
have
no
disputes with these little low-level disputes and keep the eyes off the prize, which is control and financial control of the whole country. So, yeah, it's true. No, I agree with you.
Yeah, so there's like, even if it were true that they were like that, it still wouldn't be an argument against people who are egalitarian organizing that way and not having a totalitarian government, right?
So what was the non-extreme example that you that your friend had in mind that was the reason why a central government was important?
Oh, yeah, no, it was like, red state.
Same-sex
She
marriage,
just
for
threw out
instance,
red
right?
state and like, their attitudes and their little
Yeah.
vitriol.
Because the
and
thing is-
and the crazy gun people and, I guess you get carried away. There are people like that. They're not in the whole state and they don't control everything. And there's plenty
Right.
of Democrats in every state of this country. And there's plenty of independents and there's Bill Maher type people running around the world that.
Sadly.
So,
I'll tell you,
colleges.
immigration is, I've written on immigration, and it's one of the most controversial topics in the country now. In an egalitarian society, I would be very much opposed to having, armed guards preventing people from crossing the Mexican border. And,
I'm
and
opposed to
coming in
borders in general.
But,
Right.
but I'm not sure how large a majority I would or wouldn't have in agreement with me. People could change their mind between now and then too, and everything. But I would make my case. I would make my argument, right? And I might, even among egalitarians, I might be a minority. I don't know. It's a very controversial topic.
Yeah.
If I was a minority, I'd probably just have to,
Keep working on it.
suffer being a minority, right?
Yeah.
But if I was a majority, again, here's the other thing also, that before you say to people who agree with you, we need to form a force to forcibly prevent those people from doing what they're doing, right? Mm-hmm. You have to make a judgment that it's so important that it's worth resorting to violence even, right?